All right, so we are going to walk through 4.5 years of electrical and computer engineering studies at Ohio State, where I went to school. We're going to start at my freshman year. We're going to talk about each class, what we did in the class, how difficult was it, and if I found it relevant to working after school, and if it's something that I'm glad I took or not glad I took. And I'm going to preface this video by saying most of them are not something that I'm glad that I took. And I see that as an issue because I was working extremely hard at stuff that now I'm like, why did I do that? So if that's going to turn you off, heads up, that's what's about to happen. And I just want to also preface this by saying that when I went to school because I was good at science and math. I heard electrical engineering degrees, were paying well. I liked it. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I was not the type of student where I'm like, I'm super happy to be at class every day. Let's learn as much as I can. I'm going to change the world and be Nikola Tesla and learn all this stuff. I was there to get my degree so that I could get a job and, have a lot of fun along the way. So that was my attitude to approaching school. So now let's dive into what the very first semester was like my freshman year. So the first course that we have listed here is Communications in Society. We basically just talk about how people communicate, I guess. I honestly can't really recall much from that class. It was just looking at, famous speakers or people that, how to deliver communication. So do I find that relevant in my career? No, it was an easy class. I got a B. I was happy about that. So intro to OSU engineering. This class was just like, I think this was only like a couple weeks long. It wasn't the full semester, and it was just basically like how to get involved in the engineering program at Ohio State. So that was good. Not relevant to my career, but it helped me get on the right path with engineering. So fundamentals of engineering 1. This is basically like the first engineering course that we took, and we're just introduced to all of these different types of engineering. I think we got into MATLAB a little bit and did some, robotics projects, SolidWorks, just like little introductions, talked about some industries. So is it relevant to what I do at work now? No, but it was a good, just, I guess, getting familiar with the industry. Calculus 1. So this is where we're doing what derivatives and integrals. I don't ever have to do any of that stuff at work. I think that's pretty essential math for engineers, but do I actually need to know any derivatives or integrals at work? No. So that's that. Physics. This is where I had a rude awakening for the first time. In high school was easy for me. I didn't really have to put too much effort in to maintain my grades. And, it was just go to class, do the homework, whatever. Didn't have to work too hard to do it. And I remember coming in physics freshman year was very difficult. And it was the first time in my life where I was like, I don't know. I can't figure this out on my own. How do I do this? I started having to go to office hours, struggling to get through this stuff. It was talking about kinetic motion and thermodynamics and things like this. And it was very difficult for me. So I think that this course actually was very good for me and does translate well into my professional career because it kind of instilled the work ethic that, what it takes to do hard things. So that was a good course. So before we go to the spring semester, you'll see that I have this Spanish credit here. So I actually was able to test out of taking foreign language because I had taken Spanish in high school, which I'm glad about because I don't need to speak Spanish at work. So that was unnecessary, but luckily I was able to test out of that class, which then will bring us to spring semester. So spring of my freshman year, I was taking chemistry, which I think is a very valuable class to have, just understanding the basic of atoms and things like this. Getting experience writing lab reports, that was difficult, but technical writing is one of the major skills that was, taught over and over again. And I'm glad that I have that because we do use that all the time at work, but I'm not doing any chemistry experiments. So, take that what you will. It was a lot of work for that class. First year English composition. This is essentially just an English class. I was doing PowerPoints on picture books, and I had to write a 12-page essay about Christopher Columbus and whether I thought he was a good or a bad guy. I chose bad guy, and I think that this was a good course just because, again, I'm practicing my writing skills and my research skills and my citations, and that is just a valuable skill to have, regardless of, if it's engineering content or not. So then we have another Intro to Engineering 2. I think this was another couple week course where they're just checking in, making sure that you're, doing all right and continuing to update you with how engineering's going and what you should expect in the major. So that was fine. Fundamentals of Engineering 2, this is a continuation of Fundamental Engineering 1. So in this course, we were like programming some equipment using MATLAB again. I think we were doing like electric vehicles and basically writing a program for them to like fly around the ceiling. So that was kind of fun. Not really relevant to anything though. And then Engineering Math A. So you'll see on there I got a D, and the hashtag next to the D means that I like got this thing called freshman forgiveness. So I was able to get that dropped from my GPA because I failed the class essentially. And this course was extremely difficult. It says Engineering Math A, but we called it Calculus 2. This is where we're doing like Taylor series expansions and just crazy math. This was what everyone always called as the weed out course. Like you're not like, if you can't do this, you're not meant for engineering. So let's get all those people out in their first year. So this course was extremely hard. I failed it. So now we're moving into sophomore year. So sophomore year, you'll see Engineering Math A. Let's go. I got a B. I remember though, I very clearly remember this moment of, autumn sophomore year, because I had come back from Toledo after working a pizza job in the summer, and I'm ready to go back to school. I knew this course was coming. I knew I just failed it. I was working extra hard in the class, and I got a F or D or something on the first midterm. And at that point, I was like, maybe I'm not cut out for engineering. It was extremely discouraging. The math was extremely difficult. I've never have to come anywhere close to using that type of math on the job. But if I wanted to get this engineering degree, I had to pass that class. So I buckled down and went to tutoring and did all this stuff. And, I got a great grade on the second midterm and was able to skate out with a B my second time through that class. And was thankful to never have to do that math again in my life. And it was just a weed out course, essentially. So programming in C++, this was essentially my first real class on software and programming. So that was a difficult class. It's beneficial if you need to code at work, but I don't need to code at work, so I never had to do anything like that again. General chemistry 2, here's where I think, we've talked about the fundamentals of chemistry, and now we're just talking about, organic chemistry or whatever, all this real complex chemistry that it's like, why do I need to take this? It was very difficult. I got a B-. But that was, I knew I was going to be done with chemistry at the end of that, so I was happy about that. It's just, again, something I had to get through. So that's how I would summarize all of autumn 2014. It's just something I had to get through, and I never used any of it again. So moving into the spring semester of my sophomore year, I am now in another programming class. So software 1, this is where we're doing stuff in Java. My first electrical engineering class, where I am, learning about circuits. So software 1, again, it's like I don't have to do any coding. They're showing me the basics of it, but it was a really difficult class, and I never had to do software again, but I had to take that to get my degree. ECE 1 was definitely a valuable class. This was where we started diving more into, voltage and amperage and circuits, and that's an essential class. So that was a good one. Linear algebra, another very difficult math class that I've never needed to use again. Doing like subsets and matrices and all this crazy math. Was able to not fail that one. But I got a C, so that's fine. Whatever, it's done. Needed to get it done. And now that brings into physics 2. So physics 2 is another very difficult class, but important. This is where we started talking about, electricity, waves, magnetics, and that stuff is very relevant in engineering. We're doing the math that's like on a theory level. So like, I don't ever have to do that at work, but it's important to kind of have that basis. Realistically, you could do the work that I do without knowing any of that, but I think it's good that in college, I was exposed to it at least. So now we're going into summer 2015. So I had to take an American foreign policy class. This was just a lot of reading of what like current event type stuff that was going on. I really don't see why as electrical engineers we need to know that. I mean, I guess it's good just to always have some idea of foreign policy, but take that as you will. So moving into junior year, I've got another software class. I somehow got an A in that class. But again, I don't do any coding. So that software class, this advanced C programming software class, I did all right in them, but never needed to use that on the job. ECE 2, this is where the electrical engineering math starts to get more and more difficult with like Fourier transforms and more complex topics of electrical engineering, so stuff that's not quite as used as much. So it's still an important class. I think there's probably a lot of stuff that we didn't really need to know and I've never used again, but learning how to deal with complex math and phasers, that is something that's important, especially if you're working in power. So I'm glad that I took that class and did all right in it. Intro to microsystems, microprocessors. This was another coding class that was like assembly, machine language. I never need to do that again. But I got an A, so that was cool. I was always happy for a class that I could do well in without struggling too much, which was the case with that class. So now audio recording. I love music. I saw that this was an elective I could take. This was one of my favorite classes in all of college. I was working in a recording studio making music. My homework was to make a song. So, it didn't really prepare me for my career, but it was something I loved doing. I was very grateful to have that opportunity. My professor, Mark Rubenstein, was absolutely amazing. Had given me some great advice on just other stuff outside of audio recording and how to pursue my career. So I'm forever grateful for that class. And I think I was working with him the rest of my career in college. So going into spring semester, we've got an intro to electronics class. So this, if you wanted to be an electronics engineer, I think that's good that this class was there. We're talking about, flip-flops and digital processing and all this stuff. So it's a good intro. I didn't get involved in electronics after school, so I never had to use that. But it was a good class to have. Advanced digital design. I think this was like VHDL, and I honestly somehow passed that class, but I have no idea what I really learned in there. I don't know. It was more on the computer, and so I never did anything with this again. But it was one of those classes that wasn't too difficult, so I was happy with it and got it over with and got an A in it. So now moving into microcontroller lab. So this is another coding thing that I didn't really find relevant, but made it in and out. ODE and PDE, I honestly, I don't know what that is. I got a B- in it. I don't know what that is. Audio recording lab. This is where, that same class I'm in the studio making music. So that was great. That was fun. Cool. Now moving into senior year. So between these 2 years, I had an internship at Texas Instruments and I really liked it. I was working on semiconductors. So I got to do a little bit of that. Foundations. This was another software class I had to take. I think it was just, continuing on with Java. And so you'll see that I learned a lot of software that I didn't need to know. And it was hard. And then mixed signals, VLSI. So this was pretty cool class. I was interested in semiconductors, and this was doing stuff with circuit design on the, transistor level and cadence, I think we were using. So that was a cool class. It was difficult and I never used it again. Engineering economics, learning the business side of engineering. That's a very useful class. Just understanding, how we're measuring our money in engineering terms. So that was a good class. Music enterprise. I think I could take this one just as a general elective. So I was happy that I could do something with music, and that was interesting, but I never needed to use it again. Independent studies. This is where I'm just working with my recording instructor. So that was nice. Intro to stats. So I remember stats because after doing all that other math, I thought stats was going to be easy, and so I didn't really take it as seriously as I should have, and I completely failed the first midterm. So I was able to drop that class before it, demolished my GPA. So I had to take that one later on. Now moving into spring. So systems 2 operating systems. That class was really difficult. I really did not like that class. I got a C+ in it, and I worked very hard to get that C+ even. And that was just another computer engineering class talking about operating systems and processors and threads, and I never did anything with that ever again. Signals and systems. This is digital signal processing. This is a class I thought I would really like because it was somewhat involved with music, but it was just a lot of real intense math, convolution stuff, and I was pretty discouraged by the time that I was a couple weeks in, so it became less of a interesting class and more of a get me the hell out of here so I can get my degree, and that's what it was. Technical writing and presenting, great class. Writing technically and being able to present your work is a crucial skill, so I'm glad we had that one. Capstone design. So this is where we were doing our senior design project. We could pretty much pick out anything we wanted and working in groups. So I think that was a good class just because it was, showing you how to work with the project team on a complex topic and present your progress. And it was, a whole year long. So we designed a laser harp, which is pretty fun and interesting. And I enjoyed that class. And it was good to be able to structure and present a long-term project, which is something that translates well in industry. Computer architecture design, this is working with like registers and memory inside of a computer, and I never needed to do that again. Didn't really care for that class. M attitudes tech. I don't know what that was. I couldn't tell you. The history of rock and roll, that was some general elective I needed to take. It was a fun class. Obviously, it didn't really contribute much to my engineering knowledge, but I learned that Elvis took Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog from Big Mama Thornton. So that was, I guess, worth taking the class for. And I got some good new playlists out of it. Summer 2017, this was an online class and I had to write a report on Winnie the Pooh. So that was not relevant. But I'm again happy to have an easy class that I can get a decent grade in and progress my degree. And so now I was not able to fit all of this learning inside of the 4 years that was anticipated. So I had to take some extra time and do one more semester. And this is where I just basically crammed in everything in the last go to get out of school and start making some money. So I had to take an African civilization. So the beginning of African civilization to 1870. That class doesn't help me with my engineering work, but I actually really liked that class. The professor was awesome. It was an interesting class, but again, not really why I signed up for electrical engineering. Ethics and professionalism, I feel like I would be doing myself a disservice by saying that wasn't worth it. But it was just good to know, professional ethics, I guess, and how to make decisions that, everyone should be aware of this information. It seems like common sense, but to make sure that, you tell people, this is also like a real thing that you need to deal with. You can't just say, oh, I wasn't common sense enough. So it was a good class, I guess. Capstone Design 2. We have finished up that laser harp. I already talked about that project. It was good. HDL, I some computer class that I needed to take that I got done with that didn't apply to anything, and yeah, one of those again. Music independent studies, that was me chilling in the recording studio with Mark. That was always a great time. And then philosophy, engineering ethics again. So to take 2 ethics classes. Again, both I think that it's good that we're taking ethics. I don't know if we really needed 2 classes for it, but I think actually it was one class and it filled both of these requirements. And then intro to stats. So stats, the only time I've ever had to really use it was to pass my PE exam or my FE exam, one of the two. And yeah, I didn't like that class at all. So that is my entire college career. So you'll see that I really only got there's a couple classes that were really good in terms of my electrical engineering knowledge. There was a lot of classes that were extremely discouraging and irrelevant. And that's why, I have frustrations with like how much time, money, effort, and attention I spent doing all of this stuff when, I probably could have gotten all the stuff that was relevant to my career in 1 year. And that's just is what it is. And that's what frustrates me about this process is that, I spent so much time doing all of this stuff to find out that not much of it is irrelevant. Yes, I learned how to, interact and be accountable and learned how to learn. And that could have been done with just a couple courses. I in my opinion, I didn't need to spend 4.5 years doing all of this. And then when I got to my first job, I realized that, I couldn't even do the most basic tasks there. So I had to relearn most of all of this stuff anyways. So, I had a great time in college. I met a lot of really good friends. I met my wife in college. Ohio State was a beautiful campus. I loved being there. I appreciate the opportunity, but all in all, so much of this learning did not apply to what I do now. And that's the frustrating part for me because I just found myself very frustrated working hard at things that I know I'll never need to use again. And I think that's the issue with this whole thing that we're going through. And, it's like getting to an engineering job you don't need to do any of this. And if you just worked as hard as I had to work for calculus 2 to learn the basics of what we do at, engineering, I wouldn't have had to work that hard, and I would be way better off in my career by doing that. So a couple closing remarks. I'm talking about all this stuff that doesn't apply, and I have to take my own part in that because I played a huge role in that. And what happened was, I would schedule my classes based on how easy I thought something was going to be. I would ask my friends, like, hey, is this course hard? And they'd be like, no, it's a blow off. And so I was like, yeah, I'm taking that one. And so that's why, my course schedule probably was like, oh, none of this applies. But I also didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So if I was to give myself advice when I was back in those shoes back, when we were actually completing those classes, it'd be like, hey, dude, figure out what you want to do. Look at some career options and figure out what you're really interested in and take those classes instead of just taking stuff that's easy. And it'll work out. I mean, either way that you do it, it'll work out. I've got a career that I love, and it wouldn't have been possible if I wouldn't have got this degree. I think that might be changing, and there's other options to, get into this field and do some good work if you get practical, relevant training experience. So that's, what I'm working on outside of this. But I just wouldn't get discouraged if you're feeling, this math isn't crazy hard. Like, you're not gonna have to do this stuff at work, and unless you search out a job where that's what they do. But for all my friends that graduated with EE and have jobs now, we're not doing Taylor series expansions. So, yeah, let me know if you have any questions or need some advice on your career path. I'd be more than happy to help, and best of luck on your electrical engineering journey.